time. Julie and I'll just chat. So today's topic is going to be a really, 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 really good one. We always talk a lot about both the law and practically
Real life.
speaking, real life, not just the law, because the law is just one tool, right, in our toolbox to handle the transition. So I love that we do that.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really old school approach, is just to go straight up litigation and that's it. And I've seen that with some of the lawyers nearing retirement, that's kind of the way that they were taught and what they do. But really just going the straight up litigation route can be dangerous.
I mean, it's never the most efficient ever, because some of the problems that you're going to face in your divorce are not really legal problems. They're practical problems. And then your legal problems could be solved sometimes practically. So, I think hiring, if you're going to work with a lawyer, working with somebody who's super creative and practical is 10 times out of 10 a better idea than somebody who's just like, I just want to fight, unless you're one of those clients who just wants to fight. And what's your best advice for those clients who are just like, I want to fight?
It's interesting. I was talking to a client yesterday, and he's mad. He's really upset about how he's been treated. And he wants a moral victory. He wants to feel justified. He wants to feel like, yeah, there's right and wrong, and right is going to prevail. And I had a really long conversation with him just about what that looks like. If you're going to go down that path, you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees and costs. The outcome's totally uncertain. And let's really be honest with ourselves. Let's say you have the biggest victory and the court sanctions the other side, and you're proven right and the principle of the matter is proven. Do you really think the other side's going to suddenly see it your way? They're likely going to be like, oh my gosh, the system wronged me. He or she is such a jerk. And your point will not be taken the way you want it to be, most likely. So you're going to need to decide what's more important for you: staying enmeshed and engaged in this ongoing conflict, or cutting your losses and moving on. My mentor in the law, he used to always say, every lesson in life has its tuition. Ooh. So if you're fighting to try to get even monetarily, you're likely just going to keep throwing money at the problem. And sometimes we just have to admit that we made a mistake, whether or not it was our fault, and learn from it and move on. And that might mean, admitting that, you're not going to recoup all the money you put into the relationship or something like that.
Right. I mean, if we could just start by saying, you're going to come out at a loss. There is a price to get out of your marriage, whether or not you use lawyers, no matter what, there's going to be costs. And so trying to figure out, the fastest way out is usually the cheapest way out. Not always, but anybody who wants vindication and is looking for justice to be served will probably be disappointed.
The judge isn't going to see it the same way, most likely, won't take it as seriously as you do. And really what this is you're looking for some sort of external validation. Mm-hmm. And instead, can you go inside and get, learn your lessons and get your own validation instead of going on a 6 month to 1 year, really fishing expedition, because proving your point is nebulous. Getting the court to vindicate you is nebulous. We see on TV these amazing courtroom scenes where there's these massive victories and justice is served and it's beautiful, but I've been a lawyer for almost 20 years, and those types of moments are extremely rare, especially in family court. There's almost never a landslide victory.
Almost never. And And I'm thinking of one particular case that we worked on where these parties were married for more than 40 years. Husband was a pilot. Turns out he'd been living a double life. He
Oh,
had
wow.
another, yeah, he had another woman he was married to in China, I think. It was a long, we had huge waste claims. He had supported another family while he was married for 40 years. Okay. So those facts, like they don't get better than that in terms of waste, but they wouldn't settle. We had to go to court. We ended up proving waste. She won, but she didn't feel like she won. Like no
Mhm.
amount. It didn't matter that she got what she was looking for from the courts. The nothing could repair the loss of the betrayal. And sometimes we're looking for the court to do that, to help fix the wound that we've suffered from our marriage, and it can't.
Yeah, it's really tough because you want that easy, not even easy, but that solution. And like that example you just gave, you can even get to the end point and then realize, no, that didn't do it for me.
Didn't do it. I won and I still feel exactly the same. Still heartbroken, still empty, still angry, still with less money than I had before I was getting a divorce, even though I'm getting this waste claim. Still, it just, yeah. So what are some survival tactics?
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about top survival tactics to stop getting triggered by your soon to be ex and reclaim your life. Why are we talking about this to begin with? We're lawyers, family lawyers. We should be talking about, how to file a petition or something like that. But what you'll find if you really get into the family courts is that you can't just run to court and get an immediate solution. I mean, yes, there are avenues for emergency relief, but they're very strictly defined. And you need to show irreparable harm, which is a really high standard. I mean, just imagine, well, wow, he may get hit or my son may suffer emotional. Like, there's a lot of speculation about what may happen, and that often doesn't qualify for emergency relief. You need to have some really strong evidence of irreparable harm. So you're not going to be able to just run to the court and get emergency relief in the majority of the circumstances. Plus, even if you go to court on a non-emergency basis, it's going to take months to get to a resolution. So the hot thing that you're really upset about now is going to, diminish over time. And then you may be disappointed to find that the courts want you to work it out. Like the judge doesn't want to figure out your parenting plan. And the judge doesn't want to be like, the person punishing which parent's the bad parent. Like the judge really doesn't want to do that. The judge will in certain circumstances, but they really don't. So
Mhm.
what do you do when you're having troubles, like real significant problems in your life, but the court is not going to be your avenue of relief? That's what we're going to talk about today. What are your thoughts on that, Billy?
We really do need to talk about what the court cares about and what the court doesn't care about, because unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people not go to court when they should have, and a lot of people go to court when they shouldn't have. And most of the time, more often than not, people want to go to court for things that the court doesn't care about. It is rarer that somebody should have gone to court or should have fought something and they didn't. But those situations that I see most often, both in my practice and online when I'm watching people discuss, is like, if you are a victim of domestic violence, this matters. You should not think the courts always go for 50-50. It doesn't matter that there's been domestic violence. I should agree to joint legal and 50-50. I disagree with that. That is not what the law says. That is not true. So I do not think that you should give up on that. And if you believe your child is in danger, I don't believe, and you've got like real issues. You've got an alcoholic parent. You've got a parent who's mentally ill. You've got real danger to your child. Not, he goes to bed too late or he's feeding him, McDonald's too often, but he's not feeding my child or whatever. Like if it's really dangerous, then you need to take it to court. And if it's not really dangerous, then you don't take it to court.
Yeah, exactly. The emergency relief is there if you qualify, but there's going to be so many situations that feel like an emergency, but don't actually qualify under the law. And so
Yeah.
definitely get legal advice along the way if you're facing what you believe to be an emergency situation. Go ahead, Billy.
Well, and even if it's not an emergency, even if your child is in danger, but you're not going to be able to prove irreparable harm. What I'm talking about is like, there's this belief that in Arizona, it's always 50-50 and it's always joint legal decision making. And that's not true. That is not true. Is there a presumption for equal parenting time? Yeah, there kind of is. But it doesn't mean that it's always the case. And it doesn't mean if in your situation that is going to be the case. So even if you don't qualify for an emergency. So what are some survival tactics? Let's say you're in that situation where you do have a danger to your children. You do not believe that long-term equal parenting time is the way to go. You currently have equal parenting time. What should they do?
Well, obviously, if there's been some incident that shows harm, then maybe you qualify to get emergency relief. So obviously explore that avenue if it's merited. But aside from that, you really need to check in, because especially if your kids are involved, the emotions will start running high and you may or may not show up the best way that you could. And so anytime something happens that's, dramatic or upsetting involving your ex, I would encourage you to pause. Nothing good really comes out of just reacting out of anger or fear. Any initial thoughts on that point? Because it's so easy to respond to the trigger right away and just, explode really.
Absolutely. Like, how long do you think people should wait between? Well, okay. So one thing is, if you're pretty heightened, you and your ex are pretty heightened, and you guys are fighting, and the heat is on, I recommend stop texting. Stop any immediate forms of communication. Slow down. If you get out of phone calls and you get out of texting and you just move over to email, you're immediately going to slow down. You might even need to take that a step further and say, I'm not going to respond to this email for 24 hours. And sometimes that will help you as well.
First of all, don't fall into this trap that you have to immediately respond to everything. There's a time and a place.
Right.
If you're getting a message, hey, I'm taking our son to the hospital because he broke his leg at soccer. Yeah, respond, sure. But if you're getting somebody who's like throwing lies at you, like, oh, you didn't get our daughter to school on time and you didn't do her homework and she had dirty clothes and it's just like all this stuff that's not true. And the first thing you want to do is like fight back. That's where I would take a pause, because that's when you're falling into their world. You're losing your power because now you're getting all upset and you're getting triggered and you're falling into it. But really, there's no emergency here. These are lies. This is stuff that can be addressed. And the other side also needs to learn to communicate with you differently. And if you're going to just engage right away and throw back or get into this fight with them, you're really not changing anything in your communication dynamics.
No, and you are giving them what they want. If they're spewing venom at you, you're a terrible mother. This shows how much you actually care for our child. If you blah, 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 you always blah, 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 blah. That is what they want. What they want is your anger and your hurt and your energy and your emotions. Like, the best thing you can do is just refuse to engage, give them nothing. It doesn't mean you're not going to set the record straight, because a lot of people worry, but don't I need to respond? If I don't respond, will they think that I've admitted it? You have all day and 3 weeks. You could respond anytime you want, in any way. You could respond, 48 hours later saying, none of this is true, period. Not justifying yourself, not proving them wrong.
Definitely. Don't feel like you always have to prove yourself right. A
You
denial
don't
can
for
be
them.
enough.
Yeah,
You can
it
just say, nope,
can.
not true. You don't
Yeah.
have to get into this long, protracted texting thing that's taking you away from valuable time with your kid, and you're all angry and upset, which your kid knows. Like they feel it, they totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no. And
No.
and
And
this is, yeah, go ahead.
if you
Go
are going
ahead.
to end up in court, if you know that you have a court date, you do need to be prepared to offer evidence to the contrary of you're being accused of. But it is not the time to tell the other party what your evidence is or what you plan to show or try to convince them that you're right. It's not going to happen. So take this as intel. Think about this as discovery. You've discovered what it is they're going to say about you, and now you need to think about how you're going to combat that should you need to. But right now is not the time you need to.
So one technique to start, releasing yourself from these triggers is when it comes up, pause and observe how you're feeling. Check in with your body. Are you feeling it in your stomach? Is it in your chest? Is it in your neck and your shoulders? Is it your face? Like, where are you feeling the upset? And that's
Mm,
going to help you really just start to recognize how this person is really making you feel. I mean, obviously, you know that they upset you, but when you can check in with how it's manifesting in your body, sometimes that can be a really big wake up call like, wow, I need to stop feeling this way. I'm getting divorced for a reason, or we broke up for a reason. Why am I still trapped in this emotional bond with this person?
totally agree. Checking in with your body is great. Like I find that sometimes I'll carry it in my jaw. My jaw will get really, really tight or here, and taking your 2 feet, planting them on the ground and doing anything bilateral really, 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 really helps ground the body, really influences the nervous system, which allows our brain to be its best self. Like this is not woo-woo stuff. This is like just literally like we're whole human. We're not just our emotions and our brain, our body and our brain, it's all connected. And so we have the ability to go move. The other thing, I've got some people on TikTok who are making some really great boundary statements.
Hmm.
And if you are on TikTok, there's some people you can follow who are just great at boundary statements. And they have these like, 10 one-liners, and they're so brilliant. Things like, did you mean to say that out loud? Or the one that was brought up here was that I understand that's your perception, but that's just not my reality. So just those boundary statements can really help you if you feel like you need to say something. You cannot walk away without saying something, although no response is sometimes the most powerful response. Another alternative would be figuring out how to just walk away. But the thing is, if you always feel like you have to have the last word, you're never going to be able to, that will never end. So you have to, I think, challenge yourself to be comfortable not having the last word.
And really, what that comes to is you are going through what the other side's thinking or feeling like you have to win for the other side. It's all about the other side. So if you could just check in with yourself and give yourself the last word, and it doesn't really matter about the other person, that's a huge shift that's going to it's going to help you start detaching. And this body scan is really helpful because it breaks the pattern. Like instead of just
Mm,
going to the response text or getting mad or wanting to have a drink or whatever it is that you want to do when your ex is upsetting you, this check-in really helps for you to stop that pattern
mhm,
and slow things down.
mhm.
And then, once you've started to recognize how this is impacting you, you can start analyzing, like, how long do I want to stay here? You can't change, like, you're not necessarily going to be able to get the other side to stop being mean. But do you have to get upset every time they're mean? Do you have to care? what they think or say. And that's really about cutting these ties, because whatever relationship you were in and for however long, you likely built this dynamic between you, and now you got to shift out of it. And so even though it's easiest to say, oh, they need to change and they need to do this or that, that's really just putting yourself in a tough cycle where you're going to get stuck. But how about you change how you show up in the dynamic? Billy, can you talk to that about that a little bit? You know, post divorce, you're not in the same relationship with your ex. So how are you communicating differently?
Yeah, I do want to talk about that. But one other thing I want to say about what you said, not only will this changing the dynamic and not, removing your role in the dynamic, not only will it make you healthier and happier in that moment and long term, it will also help you show up in front of the judge better. It will also help you make your legal case. Oh, people are calling. No, thank you. So you asked, how is the relationship dynamic different post-divorce than it was, during the marriage, and then in that time period when you're going through divorce? I'll tell you what. So, your marriage usually starts off pretty good. Things are fairly functional for a certain period of time, and then they begin to get more and more dysfunctional leading up to your divorce. When you go through your divorce, it is not like a one-day thing. You've got like a period, a breakup period that I think is probably for most people a period of years.
Mm-hmm.
And during that period of years is when you're going to be at your most toxic, the two of you. It's going to be the most dysfunctional leading up to the divorce and then going through that divorce period and then maybe even a little ways out of it. But I think it's kind of like a curve, right? So if you start off and things are pretty good between the two of you, and then they decline, and then they get really, really bad and they stay bad, they're going to start getting better as the two of you start rebuilding your own lives. Depending, the less contact that you have, the more you can break your dynamic and your routine of fighting and inputs to each other, the better the relationship gets. And I sort of think about my ex now like an extended family member that I don't particularly love to spend time with. Like I would not call us like friends, but he's around and he's not going anywhere. And, you need to want the absolute best for them. Like I want him to be happy and healthy and successful. And I have to be polite and, properly attentive like you would an extended family member, because I don't know, I just kind of feel like you owe that to this person. This is the parent of your children. Your children are half of this human. Like, I think we owe a certain amount of respect and politeness to this person. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. It did. It's a major shift in how you relate to each other. And it's really releasing a lot of those emotional attachments. And, something that can come up is, maybe you've moved on, but the other side hasn't, and you're getting like a lot of jealousy and, clinginess and things like that. What are your thoughts on dealing with that situation?
I mean, yeah, I think that can be really hard, if one person feels possessive. And then I think it can be really hard if there's a religious component, to your marriage, because if there's a religious component, it just makes things more complicated. I was meeting with a client yesterday who they've been separated a year. He really wants a peaceful divorce. She will not, move. And her position is, divorce is wrong. You are my husband. You owe me. You have left and you've done wrong by even leaving and trying to separate, and you better come back begging. And this person feels like they will never submit to a divorce because they're married and they're married for life. So if you come from a household where there's a religious component and you believe that you've entered into a covenant and you're married for life, and that's what God thinks, there's a possessiveness that the religious thoughts can kind of encourage, and it's not healthy. Because I mean, regardless of your beliefs, that's just not how it works on earth. This person does not belong to you. You have no right to be possessive over them. And so if somebody is feeling possessive towards you, how do you set the appropriate boundaries? I've heard of women who've, been separated, and their ex-husbands or ex-boyfriends will come up to them and like open up their shirts and look at them naked, and they feel like they're entitled to do that. And so I think if that is where you're at, right, if there is that level of jealousy, and being with this person or near this person makes you incredibly uncomfortable because they're objectifying you, or they're treating you as if you belong to them and you're their possession, I would probably try to just limit all contact.
Yeah, you want to have very clear messaging. Don't be, oh, well, I'm sorry, and maybe we can get coffee. And like, no, you're going to have to really set some really clear boundaries and minimize communication. And then if there are, communications, I would be, very clear, you need to let me go. True love is actually letting the other people go. It's not hanging on for dear life. And just keep hitting them with reality. And
Yeah. It does not, a good co-parenting relationship does not require you to be friends, does not require you to hang out with one another, does not require you to be in the same, to celebrate holidays or birthdays together. And I really do not advocate for putting that in orders at all, because there might be times when you can celebrate together. And then there will be other times where the relationship is not in a place where it benefits your children or anyone for you all to be together. So I think if we're still in a possessive phase, like that relationship needs to be like real broken. Like you need almost physical boundaries, like space boundaries away from somebody who is possessive and jealous over you.
As you're going through this, another tip is, don't go through it alone. Connect with a lawyer that can walk you through strategies to implement, or, file court papers for you if needed. Consider therapy for you and your kids, even family therapy, depending on the dynamic. Find a trusted friend, a sibling, a parent, somebody who you can just totally vent to. Like when you have all of this anger and stuff, it's nice to be able to go to mom or sister or brother and be like, man, my ex made me really mad today, and this is what happened. And, they could be there for you. And I like to find the people that just listen. Sometimes I don't want the solution, and I don't want, oh, well, then do this and then do that. Like, can I just vent? And can you just hear me and commiserate with me, and then I can move on? And sometimes those are the best people, other than the people who are always looking to like make you better.
Yeah, especially when you're in the thick of it. Like you just, it is really good if you're going through a divorce to find some new friends, because most likely when you're married for a long time, your friends are couples and they don't get it. And they want you to get back together because their friendship is with both of you. And so they have some sort of like allegiance to the marriage, and that's understandable. It's human nature. It's okay. But it's going to be really good for you to get around some friends who understand what you're going through. So find some friends who are going through a divorce, who have been divorced, and they will support you. But I agree with you. You don't need the fixer friend all the time at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Time and space and the ability to vent, like almost like the friend is the journal. You pour into your journal doesn't tell you what to do back. So
yeah. And Billy, if you are getting comments from the audience, I was wondering if people could tell us, like, how do they feel when they get triggered? Where does it show up in their body? Like, what are their thoughts about these, these situations and how you deal with it, are they just getting caught up in the trigger, or are they starting to implement some new tactics? Any comments?
We have lots of comments, lots of questions. One of my favorites here is from Mommy is Not Silent on TikTok. And she said, we both know that is not true. That's her favorite line when she's getting garbage. I like that a lot. And then this person said, in the time that we do fall into the tit for tat, does that look bad on us in court? I mean, it probably depends on the degree. And most of the time, this is not going to get in front of a court. Most
exactly.
of the time. One person said they just let their ex blow up, just do it. Another liner is that may be your perception. It doesn't make it reality. Yeah, just good stuff. And then we do have some questions here.